Good evening, everybody, or good morning, or good afternoon. Whenever you're watching this, I'm Nathan Jones, and I've decided to do a top 10 list of my top 10 favorite crime films. Now, something that I've been thinking about for a while is doing another top 10 list that is more in the traditional type of genres, like comedy, thriller, sci-fi, kind of things like that. I've already done some of those, if you've seen any of my other videos, but I've decided today to actually focus more on crime. And when I say crime, this very broad sense, because there are mystery movies, there's also thrillers, that I'm trying to leave off as much as I can and just kind of focus on crime as much as I can. And yes, I'm talking about crime, the genre. Yeah, I'm not doing anything criminal. Or am I? So let's just do this list really quick. I just wanted to go through each of these movies, and I'm just going to tell you my top 10 crime movies of all time. And now this is objective, and it was very, very difficult to come up with this list. It was really difficult. Actually, I'm going to show you some honorable mentions real quick. Alright, some honorable mentions that I did kind of avoid. Memento, mainly because this is more of a mystery thriller type, but it's definitely a crime film. It's a good movie by Christopher Nolan. Taxi Driver, yes, I know. Some people are going to get mad at my list of things that are just honorable mentions. However, Taxi Driver is a fantastic film nonetheless. I have another Scorsese film on here. Potentially. Usual Suspects. This is a very good film as well. This is a Bryan Singer film. Fantastic ending. Definitely go watch this. This is going to give spoilers away, but you can already tell this is the first Godfather. I wonder which one's on this list. Next is Heat. This is going to piss off a lot of people. Heat is a fantastic crime film. However, it didn't make my list because I recently just saw it for the first time, probably about a month and a half or 2 months ago. And it's a really, really good film. However, I need to see it a lot more to actually put it in my top 10 list, obviously. Next is Fargo. And yes, there's another Coen Brothers film on this, so don't get mad. This almost took its spot, but it's a very, very good film as well. Fargo is a fantastic film and also a fantastic TV series if you have not checked that out. Another mad thing that's people are going to get pissed off a little bit about, Goodfellas. Once again, there's a Scorsese film on this list. Don't worry. I'm sure you've already guessed it. So, Goodfellas is a fantastic film as well. And this one was really difficult for me. And honestly, I don't... I'm just going to say it. Reservoir Dogs. There's another Tarantino film on here, and I'm sure you can guess what it is as well. So, moving on to the actual top 10 list. Those are really, really difficult to take out of that top 10 list for sure. So, let's move on to number 10. Alright, so my number 10 film that I really, really enjoy. All these movies I've seen multiple times and I really enjoy them. 10 is V for Vendetta. The Wachowski brothers, at the time, I'm pretty sure they were the brothers. Now they're sisters. Interesting, but whatever. So, V for Vendetta is a fantastic film. Very memorable dialogue from Hugo Weaving, who played V in this movie. Natalie Portman's fantastic in this film, too. It's definitely one of those... big government versus like the little guy kind of just film that you're really trying to support the underdogs, and it's kind of a complicated film. It's actually a great graphic novel if you've never read it, by Alan Moore. It's a fantastic adaptation of it. I think this is a good film. Also, it's on Steelbook. So my number 10 is V for Vendetta. Alright, my number 9 is my first of my 2 foreign films on this list, City of God. This movie is phenomenal. It's also a long film. It's in Brazil, I believe so. Rio de Janeiro. But it's a fantastic film about a bunch of kids and their lives as they grow up into the society of crime, pretty much, and the people that they surround themselves with. Love, drugs, war. There's all sorts of things in this film, and it just hits on a lot of themes. And it's a beautiful film, and it's definitely a dour film, but also at the same time hits you right in the gut. If you don't like reading, don't watch this movie, but it's a fantastic one, and I definitely recommend checking out City of God. It's one of the better foreign films I've ever seen. So, alright, moving on to number 8, we have my David Fincher film, Seven. This movie I used to put in a box sometimes, and I'm like, hey, whoever randomly is around, I'm like, hey, could someone tell me what's in that box? And that's my attempt at a joke, and it was really terrible, I know. If you've ever seen that movie or actually heard that reference, what's in the box, definitely check this out, because I'm not giving anything away for that, because this is a really, really great crime mystery. drama that, like, things boil up with this movie. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman do a fantastic role together. This is Brad Pitt in his prime, and he is just, like, killing it. This is like when he did Fight Club and when he did 12 Monkeys. This is around that early, like, late 90s, mid to late 90s to early 2000s that he did really fantastic work. Seven is one of those films that you definitely need to check out if you've never seen it or have actually heard any of the references I just made. They're terrible references. Ugh. Alright, my number 7, I know it's this high on the list, The Departed. This is one of the best Scorsese movies I've ever seen. I love Scorsese. I showed you Taxi Driver and I showed you Goodfellas, and I know those are both fantastic films, but to me, when I think of Martin Scorsese and I think of the film that defines him, is 2006's The Departed. And with that, I think this movie just really personifies it really honestly put Leo in the spotlight a little bit more than he's not just this kid from the Titanic. I mean, there was obviously Gangs of New York, which I think came a little bit before this, maybe a little after. I can't remember what. That's another Scorsese movie. I think it came right before it. But this movie is fantastic. It's got Matt Damon, and it's also got Jack Nicholson, even Mark Wahlberg. They all have fantastic roles in this film. And honestly, to put this above Goodfellas is really hard for me to do, because that's honestly, to me, the Scorsese movie. But to me, The Departed is what defined just current modern gangster films, and I think this is one of the better ones, and this is something that just will continue to be a classic and will set the tone for a lot of things in the future. So let's move on to number 6. I have right here Stanley Kubrick's The Clockwork Orange. This might be a controversial pick because you might not think if it's a crime film. It's a really zany film, that's for sure. It's a zany book too. But Clockwork Orange is a really crazy film about England in the mid-70s. I think I can't even remember when this, like the time period that it's set up in. It's kind of a dystopian future, but also at the same time the current. It's definitely, I'm ranting right now. It's definitely a timepiece, and you can tell by the fashion present in this movie that it was futuristic, but also at the same time very very grounded in the 70s, and it's just a great movie. It's following this band of dudes and guys who are just like causing a lot of havoc and just being criminals. There's a very graphic scene in this movie that happens really early on. It's a rape scene. It's really about Alex and how he's this hooligan guy, and he just constantly getting in trouble, and people are trying to set him straight. And there's a couple of things that just happen in this film that are just worth watching. And definitely, this is one of the best Kubrick films you'll ever see. And honestly, when I say best Kubrick films, watch all the Kubrick films, really. There's a lot of good ones. I haven't seen some of his movies from the 40s and 50s, but I definitely want to see those as well. But anyways, Clockwork Orange, classic film. Definitely go check that movie out. Alright, now we're down to the top 5. These are my big ones. These are some of my favorite films in the crime series genres. Number 5 is Rashomon, my second foreign film. This is Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon. This is, some people might think this is not a crime movie. There's a crime that happens in this movie, and it's different people's takes and perspective of what happened in this crime. From the bandit who portrayed the crime, potentially, this girl who was attacked and potentially raped, and also her husband. And so you see all these different aspects of this crime, and it's just set the tone for a lot of the things that came in the future. And I think this movie is a fantastic film. It's shot beautifully. It's the scenery in this film, and also just like the undertones, and just how much depth and like heaviness this movie has towards the human condition is just, it's a fantastic film. So definitely check out Rashomon. I'm going to stop being a film critic right now. And this is a controversial number 4 pick, but it's number 4 because I've only seen this movie twice, and it's because it's really long and I don't watch it all the time, even though this is one of the greatest films of all time, objectively. And that is Godfather Part 2. You saw Godfather Part 1. As you notice, I was talking about there's potentially a movie that's on this list that is not Godfather Part 1. And that's Part 2, because Godfather Part 2, there's a couple of movies that are sequels that almost transcend the original. When I think of it, I think of Empire Strikes Back, and I also think of Godfather 2. This movie has a fantastic Robert De Niro going back in time as the original Godfather. it also just, it really further cements Michael Al Pacino's character as he's becoming the Don. He's becoming this Godfather, and it just goes back and forth. And I just think it was one of the original innovators of that kind of storytelling, obviously in the big film sense, and so it just continued that way. And also, Francis Ford Coppola is one of the greatest directors ever, and so I would say that this movie transcends time, and it's always going to be a classic. So definitely check out Godfather Part 2. And yes, I'm sorry that there's 3 above this, but this is just obviously my list, and these are my opinions. Number 3 is one of my favorite movies of all time, and that is Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners. Now, it was hard picking one of the Denis Villeneuve's movies because Sicario and Prisoners are both in the crime kind of realm. This movie has so much depth and weight to it that it just crushes me every time. The tone of it, the cinematography, the soundtrack, Jake Gyllenhaal and Hugh Jackman just kill it in this film. It's really hard to say. Paul Dano just fucking kills it too, honestly, because just the character he plays in this movie is just, it's so disgusting, but also at the same time, like, this could definitely happen in real life. And that's something that has a lot of scary elements to it. And so Prisoners is one of those films I think you should all watch, definitely. If you've just seen, I just did a Blade Runner 2049 review. Denis Villeneuve, this is him in his prime. I mean, obviously, Denis Villeneuve has done everything pretty much from his inception with Maelstrom, which I have never seen, by the way. Has continued to just amaze everybody. And so I can't wait to see what in the future and holds with him. So, moving on to my top 2. What could they be? Well, I talked about the Coen brothers a little earlier, didn't I? Well, here's my number 2 pick, and also my number 1 Coen brothers film of all time when it comes to crime, by the way. I would like to say Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is my favorite movie they've done. But anyways, No Country for Old Men is a fantastic, fantastic crime drama starring Josh Brolin. We got Javier Bardem in this as well, and then Tommy Lee Jones. Just it's an amazing film. There's no soundtrack to this film. A lot of people don't notice that because it's so heavy, but also at the same time so real, the things that are happening. But also it's just strange. There's a lot of strange things happening in this strange kind of West, and it's really cool. It's a modern type of Western. In 2007, saw a lot of really good films all that same year, with There Will Be Blood, the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, but also No Country for Old Men. The cinematography in this movie, I can't remember his name, it's going to drive me nuts. I have to look this up. Roger Deakins. It's gorgeous. And this movie has twists and turns to it. You won't know what, at the end, if you've never seen this movie, you won't know what's going to hit you. So definitely watch this movie because it's definitely one of the best crime movies of all time, in my opinion. Alright, so what's number 1? In my list, anything I can think of that's more iconic than this movie, honestly, besides like Godfather and Godfather Part 2, but this is obviously my list, is Pulp Fiction. And this is, I was talking a little earlier with Reservoir Dogs, Tarantino is on this list, and it's my number 1, Pulp Fiction. This movie has so many memorable one-liners and also just parts in this. To me, Sam Jackson and John Travolta steal the show, but also Christopher Walken steals the show. Uma Thurman has a really great dance in this. The props in this movie, the scenes, it's so chopped up and also at the same time placed together so well. It's just one of those films that you don't forget, and it's definitely an iconic film for just the time period it came out in. This movie came out a little bit after I was born, but I'm really happy I got to see it later on in life and really just understand the complexity of this film, and also just the depth and how much it means to a lot of people. And obviously there's the cliche parts that a lot of people think, and they have, like the posters on the wall with, Sam Jackson and John Travolta with the guns, but also sometimes it's a banana. It's just always funny. Tarantino has a way of making really good films, and also just in general, all of his films are really, really good. But for crime, this is my top 10 list, and honestly, I would really like to hear your opinion on my list here down below. So write down your list. What did you think of this top 10 list? If you thought any of it was good or not. I want to hear your comments down there. You make sure you like, comment, and share. And don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.